We're going to save the introduction today, and I'm going to keep this brief. I wasn't planning on doing a show today, and was going to get back with you Tuesday through Friday here as we cover all things baseball, sports, and Unify in America. And I got to be honest, I was bothered by what I heard about last night and before I woke up this morning. A message that I've thrown out there a series of times over the last week to 10 shows that I've done has been about the importance of being around people that you love, being around people that you know, but also keeping an open enough mind to the fact that not everybody is 100% happy around the holidays, and that some people look at the holiday season as a burden. And we have a shooting in Long Branch today, or last night. It's right over where I work. I got a lot of friends that live out in that area. And I'm wondering, as I'm speaking right now, if a simple discussion with that person could have kept him from committing such a horrific act. Obviously, he is, deserves the, to be rid of himself for his decision to do what he did. But I wonder if a friend, a family member, or somebody that was close enough to the person and had a sense of the person's life and could have had an idea that maybe all wasn't well with this young boy, who, by the way, is only 16 years old. Could these other lives have been prevented? And I mentioned the last couple months of December, as people are celebrating their holidays, as they're getting ready for the new year, are some of the most vulnerable times for many American people. And what we look at, unfortunately, is all the glamour in the holidays, when we have gifts and commercials on TV and a smiling kids and the excitement of being able to get gifts and watch other people open it up. But we don't spend any time thinking for a second about mental health. And the fact that there are a good amount of people that factor into the percentages, and in a lot of cases are not the same people every year, that are looking at the holiday season as a burden. They're looking at New Year's, when another year's about to start, and they reflect on the year that they just had, and are either dealing with heartbreak or loss, or mistakes that they've made, or financial issues that are hitting ahead as the year is about to end and the next year is about to start. And I'm wondering, and I was saying it before when I was doing my show last week, if one person that was listening or watching my show could have had that one extra conversation with one person that may be perceiving the holidays and the New Year's as a burden, could a life have been saved? The highest suicide percentage in this country exists in the last couple weeks of December. For all the reasons that I just stated. For all the reasons that I just stated last week. And I wonder if a person close enough to that kid could have had a simple conversation with him, could have heard him out, and maybe understood why, whatever reason he was upset and unhappy and disgruntled, we could have come up with a more reasonable action than him having to kill his own family. And I hope the second that it was done, it was an instant regret. And not to make a joke out of this, but I've said all along, if there's somebody that's disgruntled enough to want to kill a bunch of other people, start by killing yourself. But it's not the reason that I came on today. The reason I came on today is to reiterate the message that I was sending out last week, which either fell on deaf ears or got overlooked by people. And I'm not blaming myself and others for the actions of one person. I know we got to go through many areas of regions and social media to get the show out there to different people. So I don't even know if the Passball show is available for this kid. It obviously touches home when it happens close enough to you. Close enough to where you work. Close enough to where you have friends that live in that area. And you talk about all the different regions, whatever part of the country has been devastated with a terroristic attack, either domestic or foreign. You don't start to think about it until it happens close to you. And it's unfortunate because there's people in Ohio, there's people in Maine, there's people in, New Mexico, the people in Oregon. The unfortunate thing is you think that it's that far away until it happens close to you. But when it happens close to you, we all have to accept some sort of accountability. And I'm not saying that we have to accept responsibility and put ourselves to fault or blame for what this person did. But we're all just a voice away. We're all just a phone call away. We're all just an arm reach away. And you know what? We all live and work with people that are just like this kid. And in most of those cases, we could prevent an act like this. And I'm not saying find the gun and take the gun away. But we need to have conversations with people that we may sense are a little bit off. Or people that we know are usually different and all of a sudden are acting a little off. Our group of friends, which we consider in some cases to be very narrow, are in a bigger of a window than we make them out to be. And obviously, if it's your close friend, obviously if it's your best friend, if you sense there's something up, you know you're going to be there for that person. But what about that person? What about that friend of yours that you don't see that often, that you're just conversing on a phone? And you may sense that something was a little up during that phone call. I think you follow up. And I think you spend more time talking to that person. You don't have to go out there and say, hey, are you thinking about shooting up a bunch of people? But it's good to have a conversation and let them know that they have a friend. And I'll tell you what, this is something that's going to continue to happen until we all start taking some action. Yes, we can take action to defend ourselves, sure. But the actions that need to be taken are not about taking guns away from registered people. They're not about getting more mental health help out there. Because in both of those answers, it's telling the general public that they don't have to do anything about it. And the problem is that the general public can do a lot. They can do a lot because we the good people in this country outweigh the bad people by a mile. And a lot of the bad people weren't always bad people. They just become disgruntled. They go through hard times. They run out of money. They get depressed. They get involved with drugs. But what can you do to be a better friend? What can you do to be there for somebody that may need a couple words of encouragement? And I'll tell you right now, this is something that's not being practiced in this country. And as we continue to have people that get more and more disgruntled, more and more frustrated, more and more down on themselves because they're broke, the rest of the general public is continuing to say, this is not my problem. And damn it, it is your problem. And it's my problem. It's everybody's problem. It's our problem because we're not choosing to act. We're putting it in the hands of politics. When the liberals say get rid of the guns, and the conservatives say it's all about mental health. It's not about any of that. It's about you and I. It's about all of us as a people. How we could all make a difference. How we could all potentially save somebody's life. And that's what it comes down to. And honestly, every single time from here on forward that I hear about another one of these horrific acts, I'm going to ask, what have we done to make this better? What could we have done to possibly prevent this? And I got a feeling, when we're thinking about that poor family that lost their life last night in Long Branch, New Jersey, there was somebody that knew that family. There was somebody that knew that boy. And I bet you there was somebody that was within enough of a reach, whether it was verbal or physical, to be able to have a conversation with that boy. To be able to put an arm around him and tell him you're there for him. And had that happened, 4 people might still be living right now. 4 people, more people would have enjoyed the new year of 2017 going into 2018. So when we sit here from a society standpoint and we want to cast blame and say, hey, it's just a bad person, damn that person, give them the death penalty, while we go on with the rest of our lives like it's no big deal. It's a big deal for those 4 people that lost their lives. And over the last several years, it's a big deal to every single person that has lost a life through the act of violence. And more often than not, if not all the time, it's violence that could have been prevented. And like I said, I'm not suggesting that you go out there and are there when a person is bearing the arm, and once the person bears the arm, you're the one to stop them. Sure. That's what heroes do. But I'm not asking anybody to be a hero. I'm asking people to be a little more objective when it comes to looking at all those in our inner circles as well as our outer circles. And when you got that guy at work or that girl at work that you're just staying away from, maybe you should have a conversation with that person too. Because is it worth the result of another mass shooting? Is it? Our non-action as people is showing that we don't give a damn. It's showing that every time we turn on the news and we say it's another shooting, and we either watch it and we put out our stupid rhetorical tweet that we don't even mean anyway when we say prayers with the victims, Yet you know you're not doing anything in your own life to try to make the place better. Long Branch, New Jersey shows that this could happen anywhere. And it wasn't like this had to happen for people to know this. But it's the point that I've been stressing for the past week. And almost the past 2 weeks. That there aren't a group of people that are mentally stable and a group of people that are not mentally stable. Mental health can impact anybody. And you find in studies that people that have more of an opportunity or possibility of lashing out against others are people that are just going through a run of bad mental health for a short period of time, or they're going through it for the first time. And in those cases, we can help. I can help. You can help. Problem is when we look at another shooting as just that, another shooting, and we think it's so out of our control. Yet I promise you there's mentally health, mental people that need help around us. Some of them are loved ones. Some of them are friends. Some of them are acquaintances. Some of them are people that were within a shot of. Bad pun there. Wasn't intended. The bottom line is that we have to make this more about our own lives. And I don't care if you're living in Alaska right now. There are people that are down on their luck in Alaska too. And at this very moment are probably contemplating the next mass shooting that we're going to see in this country that's going to be reported on the news. So my question to you, and that's everybody in every state, all 50 states right now. Can you try to do a little more? Can you try to get past the rhetorical conversations of how you doing? Fine, thank you. And if you sense something isn't right, have a conversation. Spend a little extra time around that person. Make sure they understand that there's people around them that care. Because I would also bet that in the history of mass shootings, very few, if anybody, have ever gone on a shooting spree and known that there's people that were there for them, care for them, and love them. And are willing to help and understand them. And if you're able to put those things in somebody's head, you're going to give people more options. And when somebody has sensed or decided to commit an act so heinous and so violent and so selfish, there's a sense that they're probably doing it because they feel like they have no other choice. We need to remind people that there are more choices, that there are more voices. You don't like the tone of my voice or my verbiage or the way that I carry myself about? I'm sure you can find somebody that's close enough to you, that cares enough, that's willing to listen. Maybe their voice tone is a little bit better than mine. Maybe they're a little more eloquent. Maybe they're able to throw words out that rhyme for you if you want, if it makes you happy. The more we continue to not step up and look out for other people that may not be feeling as well as us, that may not look at the holiday season and the new year and be as excited about it as us. There's some things we can't prevent, but I'll tell you, in the history of mass shootings, there has to be a number of them that could have been prevented if we showed that person prior to their decision that we cared. And it's almost like, and I hate to always use a comedic movie reference, but remember that device that was hooked up in Naked Gun to, first it was the secretary, then it was Reggie Jackson, and then at the end it was Jane, who was played by Priscilla Presley. She's saying, I must kill Frank Drebin. And she's going to do it. But somehow she was able to stop by the kind words. Frank Drebin telling her that he loves her. He wants to be with her. He wants to perhaps get engaged. And as deranged as whatever it was, and obviously we're talking about a movie here, it convinced her to not do it. And I think the same thing should apply to real life. Rather than stay away from somebody that we feel is a little upset or is not at their best or is not happy or may have some quote-unquote issues going on. It's very important for that person's life and their future, but not only that, but the future of many innocent people, that you let that person know you care a little bit. You let that person know that you're willing to listen. We all got problems. What would have been so bad about somebody that was even an acquaintance of that 16-year-old kid in Long Branch? To just hear out why he was upset. To just have taken a couple minutes to listen to him. Let that kid know that you empathize with him. You understand why he's not happy. And maybe give him the right words of wisdom that could have potentially kept him from doing what he did. And I tell you, if you listen or watch the news and you watch any of these shootings happen before your eyes, and you're not feeling any responsibility for them, then you're not going to be part of the solution. And it's unfortunate, because these shootings are going to continue to happen before we start to take corrective action. Not necessarily protective action. Protective action, of course, if you're ever involved in a situation with a live shooter, seek shelter. But corrective action, maybe to get a sense of every single person. Now, I'm telling you, we're talking about what? 200 million people in this country? I'm putting every single one of you on trial right now. You're on the hot seat. Every single one of you are in a spot right now where either you're down on your own luck, or you know somebody that's close to you that may not be as happy as he used to be. And when that person gets deranged enough to find a gun and start shooting some random people, I hope you realized what you did and what you could have done about it. Now, I'm not saying you could stop somebody. And once again, I always talk about the head right here, which is the general. Every single person that exists on this planet is the general of their own army. In other words, their brain controls everything. They are the last call center in regards to anything that they choose to do. But you can't ever have enough advice. And most people that end up going on these thoughtless, selfish, heartless shootings, I'm sure at some point they would have regretted what they did. And you know what? A lot of them end up offing themselves too. So once you kill yourself, it's a sign that you have some remorse in what you did. And I'm sure the majority of the people are not, every single one wants to kill themselves. I look at that video of the guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And he tells the story. He's like, hey, as soon as I jumped, I instantly regretted it. And think about how many people have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge or jumped off the George Washington Bridge or whatever bridge you want to talk about in whatever region you're at. But I will say, a last resort being suicide. There's a lot of people that kill themselves that probably didn't want to. And you know what? Anybody that goes on a mass shooting spree, sure, as they're doing it, they're showing no regard of life. But when somebody kills themselves afterwards, they're showing remorse for what they did. Maybe not remorse for the lives that they took, but they realize they did something pretty bad and there probably is no turning back. My question is, what can we do to reach out and be closer to somebody and maybe intercept somebody who is thinking along those lines? Once again, politically, we want to make it about either gun control or mental health. And honestly, both sides, when they're coming up with these ideas, they just want to blame it on something else so they can move on. We're talking about human lives here. We're talking about lives that have value. And lives that for no reason at all should need to even be jeopardized, let alone taken. So if you're not asking yourself, what can you do to make this situation better? I hate to say it, you're going to be in the same boat the next time it happens. The same boat the next time it happens. And when it happens right there in front of you, where it impacts people you know, people you love, are you going to all of a sudden say, hey, America, feel sorry for me? What type of corrective action have you taken on your own to try to help? There are people that have issues all over. You don't have to go very far to see them. There are people that were happy that all of a sudden aren't happy. They're all over the place. You see them. You know them. And when you make that decision and decide you should just avoid them, or you make that decision and say, I'm just going to stay away, I tell you, I hope guilt destroys you when that person goes around shooting. And you want to blame it all on that person? How many people are out there that could just use a friend? But the majority of the people are so ignorant and self-centered and only care about themselves And you say, hey, I care about myself and my family and my friends. But you know what? What happens when it is yourself, your family, and your friends that are getting shot at and murdered for no reason? Are you going to all of a sudden care then? Are you going to think about any corrective action you could have taken beforehand when that happens? Is that what you're waiting for? Are we either, as we hit the halfway point here on the Pass Ball Show, John Pielli with you. And I tell you, I'm beyond frustrated. Not frustrated about what is happening, but more than anything, I'm frustrated about the lack of effort by 200 million people that we have in this country. And you want to say it should all be on the police officers. It should all be on our NSA people, or the people that are there protecting against terror. Well, that works when somebody is planning a bomb or putting a bomb together, or when somebody leaves some very obvious signs. But it doesn't help on a small level. It doesn't help that 16-year-old boy that I promise you, if somebody had listened to my program in that area last week, somebody could have had a conversation with him. And could have let them know that they care enough to want to hear about what's going on in his mind. And if that happened, that person wouldn't be sitting in a prison right now. And that person wouldn't have 4 dead family members at the hands of his semi-automatic weapon. So as we close up this topic, and once again, I didn't even intend to do a show today. We will be back on tomorrow. While we're here, I might as well hit up another topic, which I will in a little bit. But I'm going to close this segment by asking and pleading with every American possible. And if there is one show that I would like to see people share to get this message out, if you have a loved one or a friend or an acquaintance that seems to not be well, seems to not be happy, seems to not be themselves, can you please have a conversation with them? Can you please talk to them? Figure out why they're unhappy, why they're upset. And if you do that, you have the ability to not only save that person's life, but save the lives of so many innocent people that we've lost in this country, and we will lose in this country over the next several years. The ones that are lost can't be brought back. But if we take the proper corrective action, we could prevent the future series of mass shootings, which are going to happen. It's going to be a matter of when. It's going to be a matter of where, and it's going to be a matter of how close to home before you realize something should be done. John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. Wish I could say I was happy to be with you. Be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. on Periscope, Facebook Live. And if you're listening on YouTube, this is a replay. I did want to spend a couple minutes talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame, because a couple points got brought up today that kind of got me thinking a little bit. And it's amazing. And this isn't just the general public. This is baseball writers. This is analysts. people that have a voice in the sport of baseball. It seems like we're all trying to individually create our own set of rules in regards to the Baseball Hall of Fame process. And I've thought about two things that stand out that I think haven't been addressed. The difference between gamesmanship and cheating. Because what is gamesmanship as opposed to cheating? Somebody that's using quote-unquote gamesmanship is putting their toe to the line and in some case crossing the line. So, in fact, they more than likely are cheating. But gamesmanship is okay. Cheating is not tolerated. Cheating involves the use of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. Cheating involves, could be altering a baseball. Obviously betting on baseball. I don't know if it's necessarily cheating, but it's banned in a sport. But when we think about what's good and bad, what's devious, we use the word devious. There's obviously a point where we're talking about devious where you could say somebody is not necessarily being wrong. They're being a little out there. They're pushing the line. They're getting their foot close to crossing the line. Sometimes they cross over it. Sometimes they don't. That's what it means to be devious. Same thing with gamesmanship. Gamesmanship is tweaking the rules to your own advantage. Towing that line. In some case, maybe going over that line, or maybe just not going over it. Going far enough to not say that you've crossed the line. So once again, baseball history starts in the 19th century. And we started the program for the first half hour talking about bad people or people that have gone from good to bad. There was a lot more bad people in the 19th century. A lot of them were criminals first and played baseball second for a living. Racism and bigotry and hatred. Imagine the times of the late 19th century with the backdrop of today. There would be a complete and utter war going on within our own country. And people didn't care. There was less regard to put on people's lives. Yet there was still an era of baseball from 1871 to 1900 where there were some of the best baseball players that ever played. The Cap Ansons of the world. You think of guys like Roger Connor, Jed Williamson, Harry Wright. And of course, as you get closer to the turn of the century, guys like Sliding Billy Hamilton, John McGraw. And the issue back then, where they weren't all necessarily the nicest guys. So we get to, when we're talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame, we want to turn it into a flower sale. We want to turn it into a rosy, beautiful picture painted of, the most beautiful players, the nicest people in the world that play the most beautiful game. And the issue with that is not everybody is so nice. Not everybody has the best of intentions. Do we want to say in the 19th century, we're talking about gamesmanship, not cheaters? To me, a cheater is practicing gamesmanship, and gamesmanship is cheating. So what's the point of everything that I've just said? We're talking about a game here that is far from perfect. We're talking about a game here that is far from acknowledging of just nice guys. And I'm sure everybody does have issues, but in baseball, we could put a Hall of Fame together of some people that weren't necessarily good people. They were not nice guys. Baseball, in a life of a professional baseball player, carries a divorce rate that is much higher than the average American's divorce rate. And obviously there's many reasons why people get divorced, but in some cases it's for infidelity. So somebody that is not being faithful may not necessarily be a good person. But what is that? Is that closer to devious or criminal? Bottom line is, that's not a reason for somebody to be held at a baseball's Hall of Fame. If somebody wasn't a nice person, Albert Bell didn't endear himself to the media, doesn't make him not a Hall of Famer. At some point, we'll address the steroids era. And I honestly think that's a different discussion. And trust me, one we've had a bunch of times and one we'll have again in the near future. But when we're trying to define for a sport what type of player goes in there, now all of a sudden we're not, and we haven't been for years, we're not judging by the numbers. Numbers are great. Numbers are up there with people that are in the Hall of Fame. In normal sports, football, basketball, hockey, a player will be in the Hall of Fame. Now it's like we try to find reasons to keep somebody out. So when I want to throw these couple words out there and make you think of it. Devious, criminal. They don't sound like they're similar, but they're a lot closer than you think. Gamesmanship, cheating. Once again, they sound like they're completely different, but they're the same thing. So I think it's time at some point, and hopefully cooler heads eventually will prevail. And I'm not talking about opening the Hall of Fame gates like they're the gates of heaven. But at some point, you got to acknowledge the best players that ever played the game. Nobody has any more hits than Pete Rose. Nobody has any more home runs than Barry Bonds. Only 2 players have finished their career with a higher batting average than Joe Jackson and Lefty O'Doul. But once again, baseball is all about finding reasons to not honor its best players. And by the way, the second part of this that sucks are all the clowns that get in the Hall of Fame that don't belong. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. From Freddie Lindstrom to Rabbit Marinville to Phil Rizzuto. I hate to knock contemporaries. Tony Perez is on that list too for me. Bill Mazeroski. Ray Schalk. Looking at Red Shandy's stats a little bit. And I determined that I think he is a Hall of Famer. But the bottom line is that you've set criteria where you're looking for reasons to not honor your best. You end up honoring people that in other sports wouldn't be in. And you could put a whole team together of players that are in the Hall of Fame that don't belong. And you know what? You can replace those players with some of the best the game has ever produced. And once again, and I understand this is a process that started from the beginning, but you have a process that could probably be improved. And I'm not saying take the writers out of it, but give the players a say. Give management the say. Give ownership a say. Give the commissioner's office a say. Maybe it's time that we go through some reform in the voting process for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Because the process right now sucks. The process right now is getting more diluted. It's getting more watered down. It is honoring favorites. You know, a guy thinks that he could have a slightly above average career and kiss the media's ass and get into the Hall of Fame. You don't think there's a bunch of players like that that are like, you know what? This is my way. I'm going to do it. And you know what? That person's got a chance now. Let me be slightly above average. Kiss the media's ass. And have some blogger write a campaign about me. Yet you go to the very best and we find reasons to disqualify them. Nobody tried to hold Ty Cobb back from getting in the Hall of Fame. He was one of the first players inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame when they announced the award in 1936. It was Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Honus Wagner, Christy Mathewson, and Walter Johnson. And there wasn't an outrage saying that Ty Cobb shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But number one, he played in an era where people weren't very nice. And number two, there are some accusations that make him not out to be the best person in the world. But if Ty Cobb played now and was Ty Cobb the way he was perceived, he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame today. Do we understand that? In the era right now, as we sit in 2018, where we've been for the last 20, 25 years, where we actually look for reasons to disqualify quality stats and disqualify players that have been the best that we've ever seen. We look for reasons to disqualify it now. Ty Cobb wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. He wouldn't. If he played now. So I think we do need some revision. We need to look over the process with baseball's Hall of Fame. But remember those words that I said before. Devious and criminal. Gamesmanship, cheating. Those two words, as they're sounded together, sound like they're different, but they're pretty close to being the same thing, if you think about it. Let me just recap what I talked about before. I was mentioning about the shooting in Long Branch, and I'm not reporting any news. I'm not trying to pass anything on in regards to information about it. But I spent the past 2 weeks mentioning just about on every one of my programs about how the month of December is not as glamorous as we all think it is to some people. And there's people around us that may look at the holidays as a burden. They may look at the new year as something that they may not be able to handle, whether it's financially, whether it's mentally, whether it's anything that could be going on with somebody. And I've stressed for the last couple weeks on the importance of having a conversation with everybody that's around us. Asking people how we're doing. And you know what? At least put a little test out there. And you know what? If you sense somebody isn't right, or you sense somebody is a little bit down, give them a little test with your question. And if they pass your test, then at least you're trying. As I watched the news last night and I watched the news this morning, I think about how I could have been within earshot. And I'm not talking about earshot of gunfire, but earshot from being in the opportunity, or having the opportunity to talk to this person, to influence them in a positive way, to maybe make this person understand that there's somebody that's willing to listen to them. And I feel guilty. And I don't feel guilty because I knew this person. But I know what I could have done if I did know this person. And somewhere along the line, somebody did know this person. This person wasn't known by nobody. And my point is there could be a person like this everywhere. Every one of our little towns and every one of our little states and every one of our little regions. And I just hope that we are more proactive in regards to combating terror. And I'm not talking about getting yourself a gun and walking around armed. Being proactive is just simply having a voice. Simply talking to somebody. Simply asking somebody how they're doing, but not in a rhetorical way where the answer is fine, thank you. What's been going on? Let's have a little conversation. Talk about your life. Talk about your situation. Are you happy about how things are going? Are you not happy? If you're not happy, why? Maybe you could have used a little bit of good advice. And I don't really have anything else to say. Like I said, my plan was to not do a show today, but I felt the obligation to react over something that I have been talking about over the last couple weeks, actually happening in a town that I work in, a town where I know many people and have many friends out there. And just a reminder for everybody. This could happen to you too. Be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. right here on Periscope, Facebook Live, and available on demand on YouTube. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.